In this tutorial, we will draw a young tree, and for the background, what I will do is show something different. We will have young bare twigs as the backdrop. So usually, we draw either a bush or some kind of background, distant foliage as the backdrop, but we'll have something different as in a tall twigs as the background. And then we will also draw some stones in the front to provide that focal point that the eyes can rest on and then travel. So the first thing that we do in any landscape is to lay down our ground line. So in this case, this is the line against which we will have the twigs, and we will have one young tree as in the middle ground as a point of attraction. So I laid down over here, and then I divided into two branches over here, and something like this. So as you can see, I always like to do my initial composition straight in pen, but then I use dotted lines so that I can put down some lines, and if I don't like it, I can easily change. And over here I will have some side branch going on as well. And when you're drawing any tree branches, always try to use a bit of organic shape that are twisting and turning. Don't use a straight line like this, because in nature, twigs, they always have twists and turns, and that makes it look more interesting and more believable. So that's what I will do. I will use some more, add some more twigs to this young tree. Always observe your surrounding, and if you, especially in winter when the bare branches are visible, it's great chance to look at how the branches structure, and you will start to see a pattern in terms of the different shapes they take, and then you can use that in your drawing. Or you can even go to internet and look for some pictures and study the pictures, and then use those things in your drawing. So here I have a very simple young tree. The other thing to also remember is to give a proper order to the branches. So when two branches are intersecting, for example, if I have this as my front branch and then there's another branch that is going behind, try to leave a space or a discontinuity in the back branch. So try to leave a little bit of white space, and what this does is it serves to give each branch an order. So the one that is that's continuous is in the front, and the one that is broken a bit, that is perceived as in the back by our eyes. So always use a discontinuity. So for example, if I draw this branch over here, and I have a small twig that is coming out and is going behind, then what I did is to create a small discontinuity. So that tells us clearly that this big branch is in the front and the other one is at the back. So having the the order of branches clearly established really helps in giving your drawing a depth. So if you just added it like this, and there's a big dark spot and the order of branches is not clear, then then the drawing loses that interest, it loses that depth that you get from having branches in different orders behind each other, for example. So I'll just add some more branch. So this is a quick drawing of a young tree. So I will add the bark texture to this a bit later. What I will do next is to draw the stones that will be in this area over here. To draw stones is very useful to think of a simple box. So for example, in this perspective, so this is a simple box, and this is the top, this is the right side, and this is the left side. So a stone essentially is something very similar, except that the edges and the shape is quite irregular. But what we do is essentially we draw the same planes. We draw the left plane, the right plane, and the top plane, and we use a bit of jagged edges like this and different shapes to make it more stone-like. So to draw that shape, the simplest approach is to start by drawing this line that defines your left side and right side. So first I draw this line. Then what I do is to draw the top of the right side. So this is the top of my right side. It is always good to have it at an angle, the top, just to make the stone interesting. So that's what I did over here. I drew this line that defines the top of my right side, and then I can draw something like this that is the top of my left side. Then I bring it down and close it like this. So this is my left side, and I do something similar my right side, and here then I can bring it down and make this as my top. So this is essentially, you know, the pattern that we do for the stones is that we draw this line, then draw the top of the right side, you know, draw the top of the left side and bring it down and close the left, close the right, and then essentially draw our stone. So that's what I will do to, you know, create some stones in our drawing. So essentially I start by having a simple line, then this, like this, bring it down here, here, and here. So there you have a simple stone. And again, the important thing is that I have, you know, kept the edges jagged. So I'm using, you know, edges like this. You know, this is not a straight line, but having edges like this gives a feel for the stone. And to draw a stone that is, you know, behind the stone, we follow the same approach, you know. So we essentially draw this, bring it down here, like this. So this, you know, this defines my left side, and then I finish the top, bring it down, and then I finish it. So essentially, you know, this side, this area is hidden behind the stone. So what we are doing is, let me add one more stone. We define the left plane. So I start over here and bring it down, and then bring this down. So this is my left plane, this one over here, and then I bring it further down, and from here I define my right plane, and then I close it. So there we have, you know, these three stones defined, created, and then I'll add a further bit, you know, stones at the back of all of these, and I'll use the same approach to create the stone as well. So here we have, you know, very you know, 4 simple stones created. And what I will do next is to start texturing these stones. So essentially, you know, the main thing with the stone is to give it, you know, the feel for weight, you know, that these are stones. And the way we do it is by shading their sides using the parallel lines. So if we come back to this stone, we use these parallel lines to shade the sides. Now the thing is, you know, in a pencilless you will use it like this, but in a pen the shading is done by using these parallel lines. So that's what I do here. I create the line, and the shading should be done in the direction of the face of the stone. So in this case I'll use this direction to shade the line too. So this is what I do for here. I shade these lines. For a stone, you can also make this edges a bit dark. So essentially, you know, over here I define an edge like this, and that also creates a bit of weight for the stone as well. But it should not be, again, you know, it should be jagged. So you can add a jagged edges like this. That gives a feel for, you know, some kind of broken top, but this darkness serves to give it kind of, you know, weight as well. And the other thing is to also darken the bottom of the stone a bit more than the top. So again, you know, that brings out the weight in the stone, because the bottom closer to the ground receives less light. So by darkening it more, you define that three-dimensionality of the stone and gives it weight. So I did the same over here. You know, I added this side and made the bottom a bit darker. And for the top, you can leave it white if you want, in the sense the top receives the sun, so it will be the lightest. So if you want, you can leave the top the lightest. And I'll do the same for this side as well. So I'll use these parallel lines, add parallel lines over here as well, and then just add a bit of, you know, darkness to the edges to give it a bit of weight. And the same I will do for this stone over here. And in the top I can just add a simple line, and even add addition of a simple line gives it some kind of feel for the top. And then I do the same thing for this last stone. So essentially what happens is that, you know, there's a again, the top is lighter and then this side is darker. So this light top serves to kind of, you know, provide that separation between these different stones and helps us give them proper definition. So there we have it. You know, this 4 simple stones that I did in the middle ground. And for the background, we are going to draw thin, tall twigs for this drawing. And the way to do it is to simply draw a line and draw another line like this. That gives the outline for the twig, and make it smaller as you go up, and then, you know, add another thing from the side as well. So this is very much like the branches we drew for this young tree. So something like this, and then start by drawing an outline, but then again make it small as you go up. So essentially they all taper at the top, and then you can add some, and then remember to leave a separation as those branches they cross each other. So here I've left a discontinuity, so it's clear that this branch is in the front and this one is behind. So we will add some more similar branches and keep it interesting. Use different shapes, use your imagination just to kind of vary the overall shape. Here I just added a bit, and here I can use this and then cross it over here, and here I'm leaving this discontinuity to show that this one is behind and this one is in the front. So you can add some more branches similarly like this. So it's quite quite fun. Just let your mind enjoy the creative process and just add these tall twigs. Just remember not to make them straight or add like this, but just add some kind of interesting shape to them. And also remember to leave this discontinuity, and you can even leave a bigger discontinuity. So here we have these two branches from the young tree crossing, so this line is just continues over here, so there's a big discontinuity, but the eyes can make out that this is the same branch because it can follow the line direction and then make the connection between the two set of lines. So I will add some more of these twigs over here, and then in the end we will add a solid line. So I just have those main branches or the main twigs defined over here. There we have it. So let's now start by shading these twigs, and the way we give these twigs a bit of roundness is by darkening one end. So if this is a twig, this is the outline of a twig. So right now it just looks like an outline, but I add this bit of jagged darkness to the edge. As you can see, that serves to bring out the roundness of this twig, because now our eyes perceive this as dark and this is light, and the change in tone from dark to the light is giving it a perception of roundness. And also the other thing to keep in mind is that this darkness is not straight, so I'm trying to vary to give some illusion of a bit of bark texture. So again, to show I'm adding this kind of darkness over here, right? So this kind of jagged darkness gives some perception of a bark texture to this twig as well. So that's what I will do over here. So I will start by adding this kind of jagged darkness to the twigs over here, and as I add, as you can see, it is bringing out the volume of these twigs and making them much more interesting than just their bare outline. And that's very simple, and again, it's quite an enjoyable process. All you do is simply put your pen down and just move it around to add that darkness over there. So here again, I just add a bit of jagged darkness, and then it gives it a bit of it gives it the roundness. So same for this twig over here, I will add a bit more darkness over here. Same for this twig over here, just add a bit of jagged darkness to it as well. You can add you can darken the other edge as well, but if it's too thin, then you can just add darkness to one end to bring out the roundness. Over here again, I will add a bit of jagged darkness, and there you have it. Same for this twig over here as well. So simply by adding that darkness to the one end, the jagged darkness, you can see that how the twigs are beginning to take shape. So they are no longer just the outline, but they actually have some volume. And if you want, you can add even more twigs over here on this other side as well. So let me do that. And again, I'm using the discontinuity to make sure that the twigs are not kind of fully crossing each other and creating a dark spot. So I left that white over there, and then I will add some more twigs over here as well. And again, taper them as they go up, right? So they reduce in size as they go up. And if you made a mistake, what you can do is you can always add a darkness at the bottom to create the taper. So for example, here, this was not wide enough, so I just added darkness at the edge, and that made it a bit wider, and that introduced the taper in this twig. So you can use that technique always. And then let me also add a bit more of darkness over here. So there again, adding the jagged darkness to the one end is bringing out the roundness of these twigs. So there we have it. And what you can do also is to then add these solid lines at the top to give it more interest, like this. And also try not to cross them. So again, if I have this is what I do is, again, I use discontinuity, right? So the eyes, they perceive these twigs as crossing each other, but by using this discontinuity we avoid having a big kind of dark area that is unpleasing to the eye. So avoid a kind of just if you just cross each other, they don't look nice. Instead, if you have one here and then you have a discontinuity like this, then they have a bit more of a pleasing appearance. So that's what I will do. I will just simply add some lines over here like this. So now this is looking a nice kind of backdrop of tall twigs. Next we will shade the tree trunk and the bark texture. And if you have a tree trunk that is quite small in the distance, then you use the same technique of adding jagged darkness to one end. But if the trunk is a bit closer and it has a bigger size, then you can try to create the three-tone, dark, middle, and light for this trunk. And the way you do it is to use these wiggly lines to create the kind of bark texture. So these are the wiggly lines, so they're not parallel, but simply the wiggle, just, and that in a way it reinforces the bark texture. So that's what I will do. So I will start using these wiggly lines in one end, and again I will use them more in one end to create more darkness in that end. So here I am using these wiggly lines, and I will use a bit more of them in this end to create the tonal variation. So here I use more of wiggly lines in this end, and this is a bit darker, and I left the other end lighter, and this is again giving a notion of roundness for the trunk. And also this wiggly lines over here is giving some indication of bark texture. So it is not just black and white as for these twigs, but there is some indication of bark texture, which is good because this trunk is closer, so it will have more bark texture kind of visible. So there should be some hint of bark for the trunk that are close by. For this trunk, I really don't have that much space, so I'll use the same technique of adding jagged darkness to bring out its volume. So I did that over here, and I'll do the same for this trunk over for this branch over here as well. And for this very thin side twig or side branch, I just created solid dark because I don't have any space to even have some kind of white between the two outlines. So essentially, if you have an outline like this, then you have enough space to leave a white on one end. Then that gives the perception of volume. But if you have a very thin, then just darken it like this, and remember to taper it. When you add the taper is when it gets a feel for a twig or a small branch. So I do this as well. And for this branch, I again add the jagged darkness over here. So as you can see, just by using the adding the simple jagged darkness, you're able to add volume and roundness to all these twigs and thin branches of the young tree. And by using this discontinuity, we are able to provide an order for these different twigs and branches, which makes the drawing much more pleasant than if they were crossing each other and having a black spot like that. And finally, I can add some more thin branches over here just to add some interest. So again, here use your creativity, just play with it and add some more. And this branch, I will also add a bit of jagged darkness over here. And finally, I can also make this a bit dark. So there you have it. This is a nice simple drawing with a young tree and then some tall twigs in the backdrop and some stones in the front. And what we will do is now to essentially define the ground. So the way the ground is defined is to use these horizontal parallel lines like this. So I will create these lines over here, and these lines, they increase in distance as they get closer to the viewer, and this serves to enforce the notion of distance. So I start small and then I increase them in size. So when the eyes travel on the ground, the eyes, they perceive these lines reducing in size, and that gives the notion of distance. So that's a very simple, effective technique to use to enforce the notion of distance in your landscape as well. And then these lines are also defining the ground for us, right? So they are saying that this is the shape of the, or this is the general orientation of the ground. So if you have a bit more angular ground, then use lines like this, so that will specify that the ground is curved. Over here we have a simple ground, and so we use this parallel horizontal lines reducing in distance to define our ground form. And once this is done, what we will do next is to add grass to the ground cover. The grass stroke is simple, small, angular lines like this. These lines, this is how the grass can be drawn simply. And again, in a distance, the grass will become smaller. So when the grass becomes smaller, use same lines but much smaller to indicate the grass at a distance. So that's what I will do. So I'll start by drawing this grass at a distance as a very small, very thin angular lines like this, almost like this. And as I get closer to the viewer, I will start to use a bit bigger line. So what I'm doing is I'm varying the size of my grass stroke, and by changing the size and making it bigger as I get closer to the viewer, I'm giving that notion of distance in my drawing as well. There you have it, right? So, and again, also I have not covered the whole ground with the grass. I've just given a bare indication of grass using simple grass stroke, but that is enough for the viewer to perceive the ground as grass cover. So that suggestion is enough to convey the ground as being grass covered. So I'll do the same over here. I will add a thin grass, small grass stroke in the distance, and then as I get closer to the viewer, I will increase my grass stroke. So the closer I get to the viewer, the bigger I make my grass stroke. And then I can add some more over here just to finish it. And the same on this end as well. So again, smaller grass stroke in the distance and increase it a bit as you get closer to the viewer, and don't cover it too much, just a bare hint of grass here and there serves to make the ground appear as grass covered. So this is great thing about pen and ink is that you just provide some hint, and that serves to kind of give an overall feel for different things in your drawing. So there we have a nice drawing where we have a front young tree, some stone in the middle ground, and a backdrop of tall twigs. So what we also need to do now is to ground this young tree. So essentially, here the trunk ends, and to ground the trunk, the easiest thing is to add a bit of darkness to the base using these strokes. So this is the same grass stroke, and add a bit of darkness over here. So essentially, whenever the trunk ends and goes in the ground, this indicates some kind of ground cover over there, and that serves to ground the trunk. So by adding same grass stroke a bit, in more density, I'm able to ground this trunk, and this looks much prettier than just leaving it bare. And the same actually can be done for the stones as well. So this area where the stones are on the ground, if you leave it wide, again, it doesn't look as nice as if you are to use this grass cover to kind of ground them as well. So what I will do is I will make this area a bit darker as well. So use the same strokes, and we are kind of covering that area. So this makes, so essentially, if you have different elements in your drawing, try to merge them into one another. So I have a stone and a ground, and the simplest way to merge is to use, the most common element of a ground cover to kind of, connect them together. So I use this, simple grass stroke to connect, the tree trunk with the ground, and also our stones with the ground as well. So this looks much more interesting than if I left that space white as such. So there, those simple grass stroke also grounded, not grounded, but kind of, gave a nice transition to our stones and the ground. So this is almost done, but one final thing that we can do is to actually also add some background distant foliage. So right now here this space is white, and when the eyes travel up, they take in this nice small young tree, the stones, and then they look at the twigs, but then there's nothing really to rest the eyes on. So a simple way to add a distant background foliage is to use these parallel strokes. That hints that there's something further out, and it's a nice way for us to kind of give something that the eyes of the viewer can rest on. So that's what I will do. I will draw these parallel lines over here, and you have to draw them in between the trunk, these twigs, because again the twigs are in the front. So you need to make sure that you don't cut across them and don't lose that white of the edges of twigs, otherwise it will lose its effect. So I am just going, which is why I left the twigs a little bit apart. So if your twigs are too close by, then you will not be able to add this distant foliage. So having your twigs a little bit apart also helps us to kind of add this distant foliage as well. So I add this distant foliage in between the twigs. And also I'm using different height for this distant foliage. So a shape, something like like this, for example. So don't make it flat or don't make it angular like that. So here I'm almost done with this distant foliage, and I also like to end it with a taper like over here. That makes it a lot more interesting. So as you can see, adding the distant foliage also kind of really added to the drawing, so that serves as the distant point where the viewers can travel to and rest their eyes. And you can also make one end of this a bit darker. So in a foliage, for example, when you have a foliage, this is the top of the foliage or the distant foliage, and this is kind of a bit further closer to the ground. So the top will receive more light and this will have less light. So if you add some darkness, then this transition from again dark to the light gives a bit more effect of volume to the distant foliage. So same as for trees, same as for these twigs, for stones. So just adding a little bit of darkness in one end helps us give a bit more of shape to the distant foliage and makes it more interesting. So that's what I did. I just added some more darkness to one end. And make sure that you're not losing your white of the twig, right? So I'm just doing it, I'm careful to add the darkness to the area that is away from the edge of the twig. So there, I added this bit of darkness, and there we have it, a simple, pleasant landscape with a young tree in the foreground, stones in the middle ground, and tall twigs and distant foliage in the backdrop. And here, if you want, you can add some more, thin twigs to give it a bit more interest as well. And a little bit of grass over here. So there we have it, a quick landscape we put together in under 30 minutes. And in this tutorial, we learned how to draw a young tree, how to shade stones and create some tall twigs and add a distant foliage in the background. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.